Okay, good morning. We are live in downtown Montreal. We're going to take 2 seconds to share this video, and we hope that you will also share this video. So, Peter, you'll need your phone. So go to back to that my page. Hope you guys are well today.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oui, s'il vous plaît. And the minute that you see it, which hopefully is now, yay, that's a good sign. Click share.
Right there.
So share. You can just share now. So now it's shared to your page. We have a couple of live viewers. Wonderful. I'm going to share it to my page, to the Anglican Diocese of Montreal.
Could this be laid down now?
Yeah, now you can put it down. Thanks for having your volume off. It's one of the things that we tend to do is forget to turn that off. And I think I'm going to just find it and share it, and then we'll hang out and chat with you guys.
And with regret, we are not the primate.
I was supposed to have the primate, but I figured, like, who's second best to the primate is Peter and Michelle Huish. There we are, live, share to a page. So it's a kind of not horrible day today. It's pretty, the snow. This is the kind of best snow where it's actually just floating around and not making me have to shovel anything. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Not yet.
Not,
If it has to be winter, this is the nice kind, yeah.
Exactly. So we're all shared up and ready to go. So as per usual, good morning, Andy. You are live. Good morning. Thanks so much for that. We love those affirmations because it often feels weird like that. Peter was just saying, are you going to go on your phone for this? Yes, we are. Hey, Edward Wheeler. So as you guys are joining, we see some of your names, and we'd love for you to say hi. Tell us where you're watching from. Let us know how you're doing today. So we are in downtown Montreal. We are here in the chapel, the St. Anselm's Chapel. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
There you go. See, I've got one thing right so far. It's a good start. We're in St. Anselm's Chapel. It is December the 11th, and this is episode number 91. Check that out. We've been 91 times we've gone live on Facebook in this way. So as always, I'm so grateful that you guys take time on your Tuesday mornings to chill with us. Peter says good morning from Toronto. Appreciate knowing where you're from. It's really cool that people literally from all over the world tune in to this Facebook Live thing. Episode 91, Live with Leanne. Welcome aboard. So today I have two guests because two guests are better than one. And I do have, what am I supposed to call you, like Deacon or?
Deacon's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
Deacon Peter Huish. He even has his collar on. He's legit. He's official. From Good morning from Kingston. That's probably Kingston, Ontario, not Kingston, Jamaica.
Although it could be.
It could be. It would be really cool if it were. But either way, Dean Don Davidson, I am so glad that you've joined us from Kingston, either Jamaica or Ontario. And I also have, speaking of Kingston, Jamaica, I also have Michelle. What's your whole name?
Michelle Rattray Huish.
Rattray Huish. So glad to have you both.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay.
It's very exciting, yes.
I'm the most excited. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So my mom's here. Hey, Mom. My mom's name is Nina. Thanks for being here. Kingston, Ontario. Fair enough. All right, so as always, you are totally invited to write questions. We have so many exciting things to talk about today. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin our chat. So Peter and Michelle and I have actually just met this morning. We hung out for a little bit in my office, just getting to know each other. I have so many questions, and I'm sure you do too, because it's all good news. Neil Mancor is here, and Nikki's here too. So this morning I was getting to know Peter and Michelle a little bit, and hopefully you'll love them as much as I do. There's a lot of cool stuff to talk about. So Peter, tell us a little bit about, well actually first of all I should let you know that Peter's very involved in prison ministry. I put a link to not yet. Mm-hmm. Not yet, but we will. We will put a link to Communitas, that's the name of the organization. But I linked an article that was featured on the national website about prison ministry earlier this morning. You're quoted in there, as well as Tim Smart. Tim Smart, yeah. So he's also featured in that article. So just to give you guys a little bit of a sense of prison ministry and what it is. So I wanted to know, so Peter, what was it originally about prison ministry that called you and when? So tell us a little bit about you and your work with prison ministry and how many years.
Well, yeah, this is going to be very much, the simple answer is, of course, the Holy Spirit. And when I started in prison ministry, I had no idea that I was going to be in prison ministry until the very end when it happened. I had been actively thinking about vocation and in conversation with people here at the Synod office the diocesan office with the bishop and so on for some time. And one day I was in the office upstairs and they said, how would you like to be a prison chaplain? And the thought had never occurred to me, even though I had been a prison volunteer on a couple of occasions in Cowansville Institution and was always very taken with that experience, very moved by it, and was well aware that I would probably go back on a number of occasions in the future. But then this question threw me because in fact at Cowansville at that time, the Protestant chaplain role had been empty for some 6 months and the diocese held the contract for it. And they were quite desperate. No one seemed to want the work. And I said within a matter of seconds, yes.
Wow.
And that wasn't all that was involved. Mind you, I had to go through a contest or a competition, I should say. And that was duly done. And within a very short time after that, I began work as a layman at the time, as the Protestant chaplain in Cowansville Institution on a part-time basis. And that was the beginning of it. And I don't know what prompted me to say yes so quickly. I had a well-established life in doing many other important things, I thought. But gradually I learned that, frankly, this is where I needed to be and that I was needed to be. The work grew on me. It grew in a very, very gradual way in the sense that I was cautioned by those who knew about prison chaplaincy not to go in with a program and not to go in with too many expectations, but simply to go in and listen. Mm-hmm. And I did. I did that very intently for some months, as a matter of fact, and I'm so glad that it happened that way. I didn't even have the formal training from the correctional service for about 12 months after my starting. And at that time, I was so glad that I had that 1 year experience of really sinking into the reality of prison life, of getting to know the reality of inmates and staff, and understanding to the extent that I could, being untrained, understanding what kind of a world this was. So when the training came, it became much more fruitful in terms of having real questions and real images to work from.
If only that were the way in life. It's so often the case where you have an actual experience of something, then you can actually have the insights to get the training. Exactly. But it always goes the reverse, and it's sort of backwards. Mm-hmm. Good morning to Karen Pitt from Timmins, Ontario. So this morning I learned something, another fascinating tidbit of information is that you both met in a prison context. So we know a little bit about how you came to prison ministry. Michelle, tell us a little bit about how you got involved.
Well, as you just learned, I met Peter in prison, and
you guys probably don't say that. You meet at a party. How'd you meet?
And the rest is history. So as is normally said, no, I went in as a prison volunteer, as a Jamaican going into a course that Peter was running in the Cowansville Institution. A course that he had designed to try and attract some of the Rastafari and the Caribbean inmates to come to the chapel, and it was called Almighty God is a Living Man.
Oh, and, that's familiar.
So that's a line from a Bob Marley song. And I was requested as a Jamaican to buy a book to bring to use in that course, and also to come and be a token Jamaican in that course.
Wow.
So I eventually accepted, and we met. And
I love it. So now I need to know, of course I've got the Bob Marley song in my head, so thanks for that. Yeah. 1 and 2, I need to know, so did you have a successful time reaching out to the Rastafarian population?
Well, to that point, and one of the reasons for even doing the course was I'd noticed that there was quite a gulf between the black inmate community and the rest of the community, and not uncommon in prison life, and not uncommon in a broader sense. And I knew from speaking individually with those guys that in fact there were some fairly deep roots in faith, and so I wanted to find a way to bridge that gulf. And the first night we had 28 guys with dreadlocks coming into the chapel for the very first time, and they stayed for the 4 or 5 sessions of the course that followed, and I would say it made a huge difference. In fact, we never looked back in terms of life in the prison, the gulf disappeared, and thereafter there was always a wonderful mix of people coming into the chapel.
Yeah,
it was
so
great.
I remember I watched Bob Marley's funeral on YouTube, and I was really surprised when I was like, oh, they're singing hymns that I know. Because as you say, there is some synergy, right, between the traditions. So that's really an interesting little aside story.
Yeah.
So thanks for letting us know. Again, if you guys have any questions about prison ministry for Michelle or Peter, please shoot them into the comments. I'll try and get to them. And good morning to all the people saying good morning. So Nikki put a link to the Communitas website, I believe, is that right? Communitas.montreal.org. That's you guys?
That's correct. Yeah.
So this is the organization that you both founded. Peter founded. And can you say a little bit about Communitas?
Sure. Well, just to go back to the founding of it for a second, though, first of all, it's a community reintegration project, and it came about because, much as I was completely drawn into the life of into prison life and the needs of the guys in prison as a prison chaplain, the institutional chaplain, it very quickly became obvious to me that much as important as that being with them there was, that it was also really important for them that they were able to manage their return to the community. And they had many of them had great concerns about that, how it was going to go, because there'd been breaks in family connections, there'd been repudiation by the community. They were worried about ever showing their face again, where they had come from. They were worried about all kinds of issues, not just including the practical ones of, will I ever be able to find work? How will I make a living? What if I meet some of my old cronies that might attempt to create temptations for me in terms of leading the same kind of life again? Many, many issues came up. And so I did, over a period of maybe 12 months, I went around to community projects. I went around and visited some family members and visited churches in the community, a whole host of different churches, Catholic, Protestant, and so on, in the southwest part of Montreal, where a great number of the guys that I worked with actually had come from. And so out of that, I was amazed at the response I received from people in the community. Yes, they would say, yes, we really have the same issues, the same concerns as our family members who are in prison, and we don't know where to start and how to deal with making things different for them when they come out, and rebuilding our lives and their lives. And so very quickly a constellation of people formed that wanted to work towards solving those kinds of problems.
And how many years ago was this?
Just about 20 years ago.
20 years.
Yeah, well, 19 actually. And that's when we established a project called Montreal Southwest Community Ministries, which a few years later became MSCM. People didn't want to bother with all the words. And so we lived for many years as MSCM, and just a few years ago now, we took another step of becoming incorporated, becoming a registered nonprofit organization and a charity. And so now we function under the name of Communitas.
Congratulations, that's quite an accomplishment. And I'm sure you've been instrumental in setting up the organization.
Yes, I've been involved at every stage from the beginning. And,
not surprised at all. So tell us, now that we have a little bit of an understanding of how, a little tiny glimpse into how you got going, tell us how you live out the work that you do. How do you carry out your calling? What does your life look like, both of you, in this ministry?
Well,
busy, I'm sure, first of all. Super busy.
I would say first thing that has to be said is that it's total. I mean, this is really, it's a vocation for both of us. And I think it's fair, I can say I'm blessed because Michelle has also been drawn vocationally into the same work. And so we do it as a team.
Right.
And so it's total. I would say there's no time cards to clock here. Where our total life has been living in that communitas and prison chaplaincy reality for the last 19 odd years, and so that's the first part about it. And frankly, that's our community. One of the questions that comes up, of course, well, how do you be church in that context? Well, frankly, it wasn't, it's not foreign to me, it never was, that in fact, that is church for me. That is where I go to church. Yes, I have a role as a deacon in the local church here in the cathedral now, and it was also always before that in another church in NDG in St. Columba while it was open. But the church is a much bigger reality for me and for Michelle than being in church on a Sunday in formal liturgical roles and so on. And there's no doubt, but that's part of our church community. But the community of prison, the community at large where people work at reintegrating, where people try to be most effectively as possible, people in community, those are the places where we live church.
Mm-hmm. So I learned this morning that not only are you both very involved in actual prison ministry, meaning going to prison and I guess advocating and visiting, but that you're also really involved in, you called them circles of
Support and accountability.
Circles of support and accountability. Tell us about that. That sounds like it's revolutionary work.
Yeah, for Circles of Support and Accountability, or called COSA for short, is a system that was invented actually in Canada in 1975, and it was set up to accompany men, high risk and high needs men who are returning to the community, so that they could be kept safe within the community. And it's a very simple. It looks very simple. It's just having the core member, as that person is called, and a group of volunteers who meet frequently every week, normally at least once a week, sometimes more depending on the need, to basically touch base, see what's happening, discuss issues, and form some kind of community for the core member. And we have found that with this fairly simple activity, and constancy, confidentiality also, men who might be at risk to reoffend, they don't. They find their community in us, in their circle, and if they are at risk, they bring their fears, their problems to the circle, and the circle resolves it in the circle, and the person can move on.
So you have a comment. So one of your fellow clergy out in Timmins, Ontario, said that she was involved in COSA in Halifax, and she said it works. So that's always nice to hear that different people have been applying COSA in different places. It is a restorative justice principle in practice. Wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was. That seems like so essential to healing, is to be able to provide this type of support for people. And so the dinners that you do here, are they a part of that, or is that separate?
That's separate.
A totally separate thing. So where do you do the circles, or is that you can't say where?
No,
is it private? Okay.
Well, with circles, I'll just backtrack a slight bit before going on with that. Circles is probably the biggest part in terms of using our resources, biggest part of our work, because it involves dozens of volunteers. Each circle has 4 or 5 volunteers just to accompany one guy. Oh yeah, on an ongoing basis. Some of our circles have been going on for many years already. So that small group becomes, frankly, the family and the community of the guy, and that's one of the reasons building in those kinds of relationships, why it works so well. But now to say that the other things we do are all really geared to assist the re-socializing, the socialization of people who have been maybe never been socialized,
right?
Frankly, and certainly have fallen out of community and fallen into a state of isolation. So our regular community meeting held right here on the cathedral and the diocesan property, Fulford Hall. It's called Open Door. Open Door is a gathering of every week, 30, 40 people, half of which are volunteers, half of which are men who have actually done time in prison. And so that's a much more social and lightweight compared to circle work, which is quite intensive. Just a re-socialization, giving people a time in a comfortable setting to, at their own pace, and in a safe place, to begin to exercise themselves socially with those who are gathered. That's every week, and has been for 19 years. Table talk is another activity that we do. It's in our offices, which is not on the church property. It's in our office in the St. Henry area of Montreal. And every Friday we gather for a meal. We gather for a meal with conversation. It's very, very informal.
So you guys don't eat at home very often.
No, not really, no.
Every Tuesday and every Friday you're out.
Right. Yeah. And so in the circle work that we asked the question, the circle work
Yeah.
happens in our office,
Also in your
where
office.
we can ensure privacy and,
Right.
and safety. So
Okay, I need to also now read you a couple of comments on a question. First of all, I wanted to say good morning to Jen, because Jen said good morning, and I didn't have a chance to say good morning to her, so hi. And she now has a question. Does this happen in women's prisons as well? COSA.
The short answer is no. And we do not actually work with women prisoners. We only work with male prisoners, and that's because, well, firstly because Peter was a chaplain in a federal men's prison, and secondly because there are many fewer women prisoners in Canada, and they are taken care of by the Elizabeth Fry Society, which basically addresses all their needs. So what we have found is that for the men we work with are not only from federal prison, but they're also Anglophone.
Right.
So we are the only organization in Quebec
Wow.
that have programs for Anglophone male prisoners.
Wow.
Whereas for the French side of the Francophones, there are many different programs out there. So we are providing a unique service for men, the minority of Anglophone prisoners in Quebec.
Right, I hear you. Thanks for the hearts. Those always make us feel good. So thanks for the hearts and thumbs up as we go. Question. I have a question that came up as you were describing what you do. So does your church, does your dinner on Tuesday nights, is that also the open door? Is that also a platform that you welcome people who are going through COSA?
they're present, but we, at that meeting, I said it's slightly less formal and less intensive. People's offenses never come up in a shared setting. So there's everyone's free just to be who they want to be at that setting, and so there's no pressure or lack of safety for anyone in terms of fear that they're going to be exposed for.
Right.
And we, from over the years, we've included in our number quite a few people with a high profile, and so it's important that we give them that sense of space where they can actually let go of the fear and the worry that has isolated them, typically in the past.
So our friendly neighborhood congregational development coordinator, Neil Mancor, writes that we should check out, Shalem, or is that supposed to be Shalom? I don't know. Shalem Mental Health Network for more on circles. Thanks for that link, Neil. If at all possible to actually put the link, that would be helpful. Then people would just click on it and check it out for more information.
Thank you.
And Neil also commented that he loves restorative practices, which is very, thanks for that comment.
We are consciously in the restorative justice arena. We know Communitas is a restorative justice organization.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that we had actually at the last Open Door. Restorative Justice Week was last month in November, and we had a huge community restorative justice activity at Open Door that one evening, where we had over 40 people there that night, and we divided people into groups, and each group was assigned. One was the victim, one was an offender, one was a community, one was the restorative justice organization, and the whole evening was basically looking at a crime and seeing how it would be solved in a restorative justice, how it could be addressed in a restorative justice fashion versus retributive justice fashion, which is what we have in this country. It was excellent.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels so inspired and encouraged by the work that you're doing. So it's always so exciting for me to learn about Anglicans who are out in the world and responding as Christians to people who are in crisis. So thank you for this work. Okay, let's, unless anybody else has another question, I will ask another question. Bit of a tricky question, as we all know, but I would like to know from both of you, to hear from both of you, if you could share maybe one or two of the challenges of this ministry, and also perhaps one or two of the highlights of this ministry. I'm sure there are countless examples, but what could you share with us today as a challenge and or a highlight?
Well, I can say that over the years you get to know the men that we get to know the men that we're working with, and so if somebody actually does actually reoffend in any way and get put back in prison, it's a huge it has a huge impact on our community. And then and over the 19 years that we've been operating, it has happened a couple of times where we've had to actually then get together as a community and heal and address. Nobody is infallible, so it's just something that can happen, and we have found that the way to address it is actually to get together. And we find for our volunteers in particular, they need that. They need to be able to do that and to be able to speak about how they feel, the disappointment that they feel, the letdown that they feel, and we need to raise them back up to be able to go on with other men and with the person who has reoffended when they come back to us, which they do.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I would say that as much as we're deeply, deeply rewarded by the kinds of relationships that we're able to build and the friendships that form, and the sense of absolute involvement in this life as vocational. One of the things that's sometimes tricky and hard for me is that just to put it bluntly, disinterest in the church. Much as a deacon, every once in a while will be asked to preach, and I always try to base my preaching on the work that we do, so I always try to make it very concrete in relation to whatever the texts are for the occasion. Those are the only times, and sometimes people, but usually quite rarely, sometimes people will come and want to know more and offer words of encouragement, but in general, I find that this kind of ministry is not of great interest to people, and that's understandable. There are a lot of forces in the community, media being one of them, which tend to create walls in terms of the work that we understand our work to be the knocking down of walls, of really creating contact between the community, those in prison, and helping those who've been in prison to reintegrate into the community without unnecessary barriers.
Hopefully, when you say media, you're not talking about this, of course, Peter.
Not this.
Right?
This is just mind-blowing for me, never having done this before.
We're knocking down walls all the time
right.
here.
Yeah. So just the sense that this is a marginal work, a marginal part of the church's life is
Right.
sometimes tough.
Right, because you must feel like a little alone.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it happens. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On the other side, in terms of fulfilling things that happen, and which I'm very grateful for, is that many of our volunteers are young people. We get
Yay.
volunteers
Yeah.
from the universities, from McGill, from Concordia, from University of Montreal, from all over, and working with them is amazing, and the way that to see them grow in this, to see them grow as volunteers, and to see how they change after they start working with us is incredible. We've actually had students, university students, who have changed their major.
Wow.
From whatever it is they were doing before they came to us as a volunteer towards the more social work, more prison work, and moving towards dealing with people that are marginalized. We've seen that happen, and I've seen how they catch a fire, and it's amazing.
Well, you were sort of saying earlier, which really caught my heart, was that sometimes in the circles themselves, some very powerful enlightenment moments happen.
So that's like when we go into the prisons, we have our Bible study twice a month in the minimum security prison at Saint Francois, And it's a circle. It's a circle with the men that come to the chapel that night and the volunteers that come in with us. And again, it's these youngsters. And a lot of them are coming because they want to come into the prison. They don't really, the Bible study part is not really what they're there for initially.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they may not have anything at all to do with church or Bible,
Right.
before that.
Right.
But in the process of what goes on in our Bible study, it's so powerful. The men are so vulnerable to us, and it's we're in a safe place, and things happen in that circle. We are fully aware that the Holy Spirit is with us in that circle. By the time at the end of the evening when we leave, and this has been happening now, like I say, 19 years. It's like we're floating out of the chapel. It's so powerful, and for the young people, they keep coming back.
Right.
They may not know what it is that they're coming back for,
Absolutely.
but what's happening in that chapel isn't happening anywhere else in their lives, and I think it's something that they value and recognize. So it's huge.
That is huge.
And just to say that, I want to, the method that we use is something that we've arrived at ourselves, but we're very, very uplifted some years ago to find that this is the disciples' Bible study method that Bishop Mark MacDonald devised for work in remote communities and indigenous communities and so on. It's very much the same model that we use. And he writes and speaks, he's spoken to us about the gospel zone. What Michelle described about what happens in the chapel at the prison, we very much and very clearly have a sense that we've been in the gospel zone when we're there and when we come out of there. It's a very rich experience for us.
I think we can't underestimate, of those of us who are ministers, how much we get ministered to when we're serving in a way that's so holy,
that's
right?
Exactly it.
Yes, and even the kids who everybody
Yes.
experiences it, and so it must be really powerful. So I think now would be a great time to actually, because we're talking about how much value there is in the work that you do, I would love to know how people, if anybody feels called to volunteer, or what can people do to connect with you? What are your needs, and how can we help?
I guess first thing I'd suggest is I don't see there, but is the website still posted?
So it's still there. If you just
Great.
scroll a little bit through the comments, it's maybe Nikki will put it again if she's still on the scene, but it definitely is there. So give us the website address again. It's Communitas.org.
Communitas Montreal, one word, .org.
Yeah.
And it's a newly designed website, and it's quite
Did you do it yourself,
punchy.
Peter?
Not personally, no, I did
But
not.
we did get funding from
from the Social Services Society of the Cathedral
Oh,
to fund the
wonderful.
new website
Thank
development.
you. Thank you to the
Absolutely, yeah.
Cathedral.
So there, the church has chipped in and really
That's
supported us
wonderful.
in that sense.
$5,000.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So look at the website. It's as I say, it's quite brief and to the point. And there is on that website a new film, a new video which we've made. Which
I'll link the video for sure.
Okay.
I'll find it and I'll link it too.
Great.
It's right there on the
Which
website.
Thank you.
uses the voices of some of our beneficiaries to speak of the kind of thing that happens in what we do, including in circles of support and accountability. And so that's really worthwhile. It'll give you a richer sense of what we're about. And you'll see in there indications of ways in which you can volunteer. There's an invitation there if you're interested in volunteering to send your name and coordinates into us, and we would then follow up with you. And just to reassure you, there is really good training and preparation work for those who want to volunteer and maybe have a little trepidation about what they might be getting into. It's a very gradual process, and there's good training to equip you and give you a real sense of security in terms of being in the presence of any kind of person, frankly.
Right.
The other thing that's there on our website is a new portal. Since we become charitable, have charitable status, there's a new portal for Canada Helps that allows you to make a donation if that would be your wish, and that would also be greatly appreciated as a kind of support, because we exist only through donations, and with a little bit of government money. The government is supporting us in our circles of support and accountability work, but quite frankly, it's not enough for what we do and what the costs involved are. So anyway, those are ways.
Excellent. Yeah, please do give generously. if you're able to. And definitely also, let's just, it's just, I think what's very helpful for us is just to get more of a deeper sense of what you're doing and, you know, how impactful and important it is to the community. One of the questions, one of my final questions I have for you, which I have a sense you've probably already answered, but let's just be more explicit about it. I'd like to know, for both of you, you know, what and where is the church in the context of your ministry? The church.
Well, I've already spoken about some sense of disconnect with church as pews and church as walls, right? I mean, there's a disconnect with that because those who come for whatever valid reason there is in the context of pews and walls and traditional practice, all for excellent reasons, which we totally support, don't really have the sense that the church is as big a place, as big a reality as I've come to appreciate since I stepped into prison for the first time and began to understand the longing of men in prison to become part of the larger community. So for me, the church is thoroughly in what we do, but not in that narrow sense of a little place where one spends an hour and a half on a Sunday. Church is everywhere. Church is the community. Frankly, I see the Holy Spirit as occupying that entire space, working with us, working with the people that we're connected with. And so it depends on the sense of church that you have. I have this much richer sense of church than I used to have. And so the church is very much at the heart of what we do in that way.
And I would say that just looking back at all the men that, in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men that have passed through our hands, shall we say, over the years, when the telephone rings and it's somebody calling from, where was he? Danny? Anyway, many people just call from wherever they are at Christmas or whatever, just to connect, to say hi, to say, I'm still doing okay, I'm fine, I got married or whatever, I had a child. I mean, the connection, you know, we're no longer with these men, you know, they have passed through our organization, but they're still connected, they still reach out to us, and we get cards, we get people, you know, with bad writing, trying to express what they felt or the support that they felt, that they experienced in passing through us. And for me, that also is a proof of touching individuals and people that, you know, looking at them, you might not think that they have any, you know, even desire to reach out and thank anybody, but they do, and they do. So that too is church.
You have a comment from Glow who says, "Hi Peter, I can't wait to watch the episode." Yeah, 'cause she came in a bit later, so definitely you can watch on the replay.
Okay.
Yeah, those are that. Yeah, keep going. If you had more to add.
Did I have more to add?
Didn't want to cut you off.
No, that's fine. I think.
No, just to touch on what Michelle said though about you asked, I mentioned earlier to you that we can't really measure success. Success is not something we aim for, but what Michelle described in terms of those people being in touch with us years after, like they've come this week from Gaspé, from Quebec, from Vancouver, people who still are nourished by the kind of hospitality, the gospel hospitality that they experienced here with us. So that's church.
It's not quantifiable how deeply you impact people's souls, right? And like in ministry, sometimes we meet people, and you can hardly translate that connection that you've made. But it's a life-changing connection. So it sounds like that's the type of work that you're doing.
And I would say that not just with the men. So again, going back to the young people who become volunteers, I know that those young people, because a lot of them are students, you know, so they're with us for a certain time, and then they're on with their lives. They're going back to the States, or they're going to Vancouver, or they're going wherever, China, to carry on their lives. But I know that they're moving on with a totally different perspective now on prisons, on prisoners, on people, on how they should regard them and what they can do and how they can push back if they hadn't come through us.
Right.
Because something's changed in them, something's shifted, and that's what we need more of in the world. And I will not be at all surprised to find years and years from now that one of these young people is a president or the prime minister or whatever of some place, because that kind of leadership, I've seen it developing, and I know that they're going to do great things.
Wow.
Great things.
Wow. Well, we're running out of time, but I just want to thank you both, and may God bless you both in your amazing, amazing work. And I hope that you all feel as inspired as I do. But it's just been such a pleasure to hear your stories, and we will continue to share and reach out and hope to find more ways of connecting the work that you do with the church. Whatever.
Great.
Right? Because this is the church right here too, right, you guys?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for your presence.
Indeed, thank you.
This 10 every 10 o'clock, every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock we do this, and next Tuesday will be our last one before our little mini Christmas break, and it'll be a bit of a festive situation. So bring your Christmas hats and jingle bells. They'll be singing. I learned so much from both of you during my ministry challenge. Thank you for what you do. Again, from Glow Opong. I love that name.
Okay.
Glow is often here on Tuesday morning.
Yes,
so
yes.
thank you for
Yes.
Okay.
I
You
remember.
do know her.
Indeed.
You're
Yes,
yeah.
I do remember. One of those volunteers that spent some time
had their
with
life
us. Yes,
changed, hopefully.
totally.
Yes. So wishing you guys a really blessed rest of your day. And our primate's here, which is really cool. We're about to go and do an amazing, speaking of circles,
Yes.
the primate's hosting a conversation circle, hashtag heartbeat of the church. So we're about to have our hearts blown open by the primate, because that's what he does every time he's around. Blessing and safety from Karen. Thanks for those parting words, you guys. And have a great week. We will see you next Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock for more of the same, if not even better, episode 92 next week. Thanks, friends. Keep
Thank
the good
you.
work.
And thank you, Leanne.
Thanks
Thank you.
to all of you all.
Thank you.
Bye for now.